Songs Encore.
Cool.
The stories behind the songs.
Thank you.
Here's iHeartRadio's Miles Galloway.
Go ahead, be gone with it. Let's get on with it. I'm Miles Galloway, and this is the story of Justin Timberlake's SexyBack. It isn't easy to shed a boy band or girl group image. Over the years, plenty of artists have tried and failed to hit the heights of superstardom that they've seen in a group setting. In many ways, the bigger the group, the more of an uphill battle it is to prove to fans that a solo career is a serious, worthwhile endeavour. Not only are you leaving behind an often squeaky clean, cookie-cutter, mass appeal image to a legion of fans who've grown up with you, but you're also, at least on the surface level, competing for relevance with the very bandmates that you came up with in the first place. Whether we like to admit it or not, there are always going to be clear winners and losers when a pop group splits or goes on indefinite hiatus. You can look at recent disbandments of groups like Fifth Harmony or One Direction for proof. Without naming names, we know that, quite simply, some members level up as pop stars and some do not. Without re-litigating the entire NSYNC-to-solo-star trajectory of Justin Timberlake, it is important to look back at what was one of the more seamless breakout transitions to solo stardom, and where Justin stood in the pop world in the years leading to SexyBack. In 2002, NSYNC finished up their heralded celebrity tour that was praised by critics as a more accessible and down-to-earth show. As if specifically crafted to give all the boys in the group a glow-up, the tour included medleys of the Beatles and the Temptations, and focused on downtempo songs with more musicality to them. The pop hits were still there, of course, but the message was certainly that NSYNC had grown up. Leah Greenblatt of MTV News christened the tour the Justin and JC show, noting, Justin was quickly established as the star, with JC running a close second. Joey, Lance and Chris have all the moves down, but appear to be going through the motions at times. Justin especially revelled in his role and goaded the audience into sing-alongs, putting in some quality time alone up front at the lip of the stage. The tour was short, just under 2 months long, and they even cancelled both Canadian dates in Toronto and Montreal in the run-up. Thanks for that, boys. And by April 28th, just in time for fans to say, it's gonna be May. Sorry, it was all over. Justin was only just getting started, though, and began working on his debut album, Justified, almost immediately. Working with 2000s hitmakers like the Neptunes, Scott Storch, and Timbaland, JT was ready to embrace the R&B sound that NSYNC had been toying with near the end of their run, but never fully committed to. Many of the songs on Justified were originally intended for Michael Jackson's 2001 album Invincible, but were turned down by the King of Pop and kept in the chamber and reworked for his heir apparent. Jackson himself, of course, knew a thing or two about breaking out from a boy band to go on to solo superstardom. In 2020, Pharrell confirmed what had long been stuff of legends, telling Drink Champs podcast that almost all of the tracks that he produced on Justified were originally intended for Jackson.
Pretty much all the stuff you guys are hearing on the first Justified album, that's all the Michael stuff.
Wait, talking about
Justin Timberlake.
Oh, yes. Okay, go ahead. Yes.
All but one song. They were all written for
Michael.
Michael.
What era of Michael's is? Remember the time era?
This is right after Super Thug, right?
You Rock My World.
Okay.
Right before that.
Although MJ-inspired singles like I Love You, Senorita, and Rock Your Body didn't have as much success as the album's most iconic song, Cry Me a River, produced by Timbaland and therefore safe to assume it was not intended for MJ, they certainly were not flops, and Justified went triple platinum in America, double platinum in Canada, and 6 times platinum in the UK. By 2004, Justified was nominated for multiple Grammy Awards and beat out Christina Aguilera, George Harrison, Annie Lennox, and Michael McDonald for Best Pop Vocal Album. All of this is to say what is blatantly obvious. Yes, Justin Timberlake was a star, all by himself. It wasn't all rainbows and sunshine for JT in 2004, though. While riding high in the success of Justified, Justin and Janet Jackson were invited to play the Super Bowl halftime show on February 1st, 2004. JT and Janet were friends. Janet had actually invited NSYNC years earlier to be the opening act on some dates on her Velvet Rope tour. In an MTV-produced set that also included Nelly, Kid Rock, and P. Diddy, Janet and Justin were the main event, taking the stage together for a performance of Rock Your Body, one of the songs that coincidentally was intended for Janet's brother Michael. As the infamous story goes, right at the end of the song, during the lyric, I'm gonna have you naked by the end of this song, Justin rips off a piece of Janet's top, revealing her bare breast, guarded only by a nipple shield on live TV. Within hours, the term wardrobe malfunction was born, and nipplegate was the biggest story coming out of that year's Super Bowl. Justin had initially apologized for the incident as a presumed accident, although MTV's chief executive Tom Freston pointed the finger at Jackson as the mastermind behind the stunt. The FCC launched an investigation over the matter, where the official government statement concluded she, Janet Jackson, probably got what she was looking for, and CBS and MTV were fined. Both stars were ordered to apologize for the ordeal, and Jackson, to her credit, took one for the team head-on, stating, "The decision to have a costume reveal at the end of my halftime show performance was made after final rehearsals. MTV was completely unaware of it. It was not my intention that it go as far as it did." While details are still a bit inconclusive, even now, it does seem a little unfair to point the finger solely at Janet Jackson. After all, it was Justin doing the ripping. The lyric does literally mention nudity, and even by conceding that it was Janet Jackson's idea, she was the subject of death threats, slut-shaming, blackballing, and career turmoil, while JT kind of just moved on. A few years ago, journalist Johnny Harris did an incredibly deep dive into the controversy and concluded that, in all of the mainstream coverage, roughly half of the coverage only casually mentioned Justin being involved in the incident, and a whopping 33% of it didn't even mention his involvement at all. Most coverage framed the stunt as a flashing or a lewd act solely by Jackson, with Timberlake also being there bearing witness to the event, when he was actually bearing breast. I'll include his video in the episode notes if you're unfamiliar with Nipplegate, but in the sober light of 2024, it's more likely that everyone involved knew exactly what was going to happen, and Janet Jackson was basically the only one who paid the price. No matter which side of the debate you fall on, though, one thing is very true. To this very day, this incident is one of the single most searched things in internet history. Jawad Karim, one of the founders of YouTube, even admitted in the years that followed that this event inspired the idea behind the platform, a global video repository for people to point to say, "Did you see that thing that happened? Nipplegate changed the world." Moving on from Nipplegate and music as a whole, actually, Justin Timberlake spent the majority of 2004-2006 getting his feet wet in Hollywood with roles in such classic films as, well, I can't really say classics, can I? But definitely films that exist, like Edison, Alpha Dog, Black Snake Moan, and Southland Tales. While not exactly undeniable successes, the films did help Justin continue to shed any last remnants of boy band smell on him, and allowed him to reinvent himself as a true polymath. Justin wasn't just a run-of-the-mill everyday singer, he was a full-fledged artist, a tastemaker, and he was ready to bring us into the future, and with him, he was bringing sexy back. Perhaps it was the fallout from Nipplegate, or the sad state of pop radio that got him going, like he told Rolling Stone, but one thing is for sure, when Justin Timberlake started working on Future Sex LoveSounds at the end of 2005, he had a chip on his shoulder. Still only 25 years old, Justin chose this time to learn more on the original production of Timbaland and his protege Danger, the duo that helped craft Cry Me a River in 2002, that his Michael Jackson cast-off beats provided to him by the Neptunes. I asked him if I could do 5 or 6 more Cry Me a Rivers, Justin admitted to Rolling Stone in 2006, and together the trio basically did. Later single and ultimate breakup anthem, What Goes Around, was conceived shortly after that challenge was laid out. Behind the scenes, Timberlake explained the dynamic between him and Timbaland.
Tim and I just, obviously we clicked before on the first record with Cry Me a River, and we knew we wanted to work together again. We worked for 4 days together on my last record. Let's see what happens if we actually work on a whole project together.
I feel like we have more than just Cry Me a River. We have several Cry Me a Rivers on this album. 1 or 2 or 3, at least 3.
There really wasn't a conscious effort. I just got in the studio, we did one song, and said, wow, this is amazing. We did another song, wow, this is great, and we just kept going. I think our first goal was like 6 songs. Like, let's see if we can do 6 consistent Cry Me a Rivers. And we ended up doing, 10 songs.
Although their influences are difficult to hear on Future Sex LoveSounds, JT told Rolling Stone that at this point in his life, he only saw real songwriting in modern rock and roll, listing off The Killers, Radiohead, The Strokes, and Canada's Arcade Fire as the bands that he was really into. For SexyBack, Timberlake would note, "There's no doubt it's a club record, but it reminds me of David Bowie's Rebel Rebel. I don't hear it myself, but I suppose the song does share a similar sense of reckless abandon to it." Justin was determined to make something different than what was on the radio at the time, and he definitely succeeded. There's notably a real lack of melody to SexyBack. Instead, it's just distorted hook after hook. Electronic bass crashes into beatbox sounds, short and frantic synth riffs, and plenty of call and response vocals from Timbaland. Continuing the full 180 from the boyish and smooth blue-eyed R&B he was known for, the sexy JT sings of is more of a sweaty S&M devil-may-care rock star kind of sexy, with allusions to whips and chains, VIP room rendezvous, and macho alpha male threats in its lyrics. SexyBack wasn't just sexy, it was straight-up sex-crazed. Funnily enough, despite its brash opening claim of "I'm bringing sexy back," Justin also cleared up that he was speaking more existentially, telling Rolling Stone, "I don't really think I'm bringing sexy back. But when a 28-year-old male or female is standing in a club in New York City at 2:30 in the morning and that fucking song comes on, I want them to feel like they are. That's what music should do. When I was a kid and I heard 'I Want to Hold Your Hand,' I wanted to find someone's hand to hold. When I listen to Hotel California, I feel like I'm on coke, sort of." To Justin's credit, and this is kind of true for all of future Sex LoveSounds, but certainly true for SexyBack, this project was a huge artistic gamble. If any modern pop star could afford to rest on his laurels and put out very safe traditional pop music, it was JT. His successful formula throughout his boy band years and even the success he achieved with his debut afforded him that luxury. But Justin Timberlake was taking big swings.
Look, this is the statement I want to make right now. It's not my last statement. It's not, it's where we are right now. And I think that if you do that, then I think you'll get the truest and best quality of what it is that you're doing. It's definitely been an interesting process making this record because I think people were curious, but I don't think anybody had an expectation because there was nothing to compare it to. But I think this time, I think there is an expectation. And I think the expectation is just, hopefully the expectation is good music. I mean, that's all you can really ask for. But also at the end of the day, it's like if you're not happy with how it sounds, you should keep working on it. Because it has to be a representation of where you are at right now.
The video for SexyBack set the tone perfectly for Justin Timberlake 2.0 as well. Directed by relatively obscure at the time director Michael Houseman, Timberlake chose to work with him because he was a huge fan of his work on Madonna's 1994 video for Take a Bow. Filmed on location in Barcelona, Spain, lucky things, it was important to Houseman and JT that the audience were aware that this wasn't a run-of-the-mill shoot in New York, California, or Toronto. Look it up, Justin's video for Like I Love You was actually shot in Toronto's suburb Weston. Houseman and Timberlake developed the idea for the video together, operating on a very similar wavelength for what the story of the piece should be. Here's Houseman in 2006.
I was sitting with Justin, we first met, and he started telling me a bunch of words. I shouldn't say words. They were ideas that he had that aren't fleshed out storylines. They're just that. In other words, he was saying, I like, something future, yet something gritty, something like that, yet something like that. And he just started putting this together. And then I heard the song, and it was that. I thought, wow, what if we meet a guy, but he's not who he appears to be?
To elaborate on that story, the video tells a tale of two very sexy spies, played by Justin and Spanish actress Elena Anaya, doing very sexy European espionage as they play a sexy game of cat and mouse with monochromatic club scenes interspersed throughout. They take turns in bugging hotel rooms and preparing for danger, assumedly at the hands of each other. Anaya is, of course, doing all of this in only a bra and skirt. For top secret reasons, I'm sure. The club footage gives off an alluring underground industrial feel, which lends itself to the distorted and frantic vocals, and there's quite a futuristic vibe to it all. It's also very sexy, if I didn't mention that. Back at the spy hotel, Justin evades Elena's spy traps by jumping from window to window to get to her room. The two rip off each other's clothes with reckless abandon as the sexual tension reaches its peak. Still committed to her life of spydom, Elena reaches for her gun during their intense hookup, but Justin passionately clocks it and stops her from taking him out. After the rendezvous, JT returns to his room via window hopping again to find it had been broken into. Since he's also a very good spy, and maybe also Spider-Man, He detects a bomb and manages to leap back from window to fully evade the explosion. The video ends with Justin and Elena returning to their passionate life of spydom by making out in a bathroom stall. Cinema! Released on July 18th, 2006, just under 2 months before the full album would drop, SexyBack was almost universally acclaimed by critics. Pop Matter's Quinton B. Huff wrote in his review that SexyBack was the fraternal twin to Nelly Furtado's Timbaland-produced 2006 song Promiscuous, while Khalifa Saleh of the New York Times complimented Timbaland's avant-garde production, noting it works because Timbaland fills it with weird, microscopic details. Complex magazine admitted that you'd now be forced to take Timbaland seriously, and Pitchfork, the kings of backhanded compliments, declared in their album review, songs which sound puzzlingly self-indulgent in isolation, most obviously the smirking, tenuously tuneful first single, SexyBack, are cloaked in a compelling intensity and purposefulness when played in succession on the album. In a 2020 retrospective crowning history's biggest pop stars, Billboard named Justin Timberlake the pop star of 2006, based heavily on the impact of SexyBack, saying, "The song shortly proved itself as something powerful enough to both define top 40 and also push it forward, severing the final ties between Timberlake and his teen pop past." Speaking of Billboard, SexyBack shot up to number 1 on the Hot 100 within 3 weeks of its release, spending 7 atop the charts. Justin would quickly return to the top of the charts again with follow-up single My Love, giving him his first 2 number 1 singles before 2006 had even ended. Justin and SexyBack picked up the 2007 Grammy Award for Best Dance Recording and was named the 2007 MTV VMA's Male Artist of the Year for his overall efforts. SexyBack would go on 2 times platinum in its first year for the song itself, but that's not all it would do. In true 2006 fashion, the song would also go triple platinum in the US and 6 times platinum in Canada in ringtone sales. I'll let that sink in with a moment of silence while you try and remember if you were one of the 240,000 Canadians who picked up their Motorola Razr to the sweet sounds of SexyBack. Yeah. As I alluded to earlier, Future Sex LoveSounds would become Justin Timberlake's magnum opus. The album produced hit after hit and would create a bond between Timbaland and Timberlake to this very day. Justin would return to acting soon after the completion of the Future Sex Love Show tour, and it wouldn't be until 2013 that fans would get a full suite of new music with the 2020 Experience and its companion, Part 2. A massive sweeping suite of music rebranded JT as a debonair James Bond type, meshing pop and R&B sounds found in his catalogue to date. He would head out on a short but impactful stadium tour with fellow mogul Jay-Z. The tour would kick off at Toronto's Rogers Centre and was unsurprisingly the hottest ticket in town, selling out every date along the way. JT would hit it big again in 2016 by working with prolific super producers Max Martin and Shellback with an unsexy-back song for the Trolls soundtrack called Can't Stop the Feeling. The eventual pop song of the summer would go 4 times platinum in the US and diamond in Canada, although I can't tell you how many of those were ringtones. In 2018, Justin would roll the dice with a spiritual successor to SexyBack with a proper solo comeback single, Filthy, co-produced by Timbaland and Danger. The track was moderately successful, but critics were split on JT's Filthy redux. The Guardian's Ben Beaumont Thomas called it a beautifully dark, undulating funk track underpinned by a whiplash bass womp, a grown-up funk masterpiece, while Entertainment Weekly's Eric Rayner called it empty and a stuttering mess of electronic and funk. Fast forward to 2024 and JT is in an album cycle once again with his latest effort, Everything I Thought I Was. Justin's called upon Timbaland and Danger for a handful of tracks and even invited the boys from NSYNC onto a track called Paradise. It's actually NSYNC's second collaborative song in the span of 6 months. They also featured on the soundtrack for the 3rd installment of Justin's Trolls franchise of films late last year. And now 43-year-old Justin Timberlake owes very little to the music industry and is making music for the love of the game. The pensive first single, Selfish, features a mature and crooning Timberlake, while the latest release, No Angels, is more of a Daft Punk-inspired feel-good funk track that never fully goes full Future Sex. At the time of recording, JT is mere days away from the Forget Tomorrow World Tour, which kicks off in Vancouver and returns to Canada in the fall with dates in Montreal and Toronto. I, for one, will have my ringtone ready. Yeah. Take him to the outro. I'm Miles Galloway, and that was the story of JT's SexyBack. Don't miss new episodes of Encore every Thursday.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Download the iHeartRadio app for more great podcasts just like these.